So I want to talk briefly about games. And I've been fascinated by games for most of my adult life, and indeed the bits before that, which I spent a lot of them in a bedroom with games. And I've always been in awe at their ability to delight and to enthrall people. They've been the world's fastest growing entertainment industry for the best part of 3 decades, and they're still growing at a double-digit rate. But increasingly I've realized that in a way the most amazing thing about games is not games as such, but what we learn from watching ourselves at play. This is from a lovely portrait series by Philip Toledano. He took pictures of people while they were playing video games. This is a fairly representative sample. I haven't been brave enough to put up my own face. It's an extraordinary thing to watch people playing games, and I think that is the most interesting direction to look at. We now have more than 2 billion people around the world playing electronic games of some kind. In many ways, the great story of mass media in the last century was how games, watching games through media, became the greatest collective experiences in human history. More people will tune into the World Cup than have ever belonged to any religion in history. And now we're all participating through interactive media, and we love to play. And I've written it's an extraordinary species of reverse engineering. And when I ask why, what is the power here, the answer comes that we evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to like certain things, to be enthralled by certain stuff. And now we are building worlds expressly designed to enthrall and engage and to transform us. This was mentioned in the blurb. This is my secret shame. This is a shot from yesterday of Candy Crush. I beat level 317 on the tube this morning, I'm very proud to say. It took me a long time. I've never paid. Now, I am extremely good at Candy Crush. I'm really good at Candy Crush. So are lots and lots of other people. These are some stats from the IPO of King, upstairs here, or I think downstairs actually, from their last quarter. 93 million daily active users, 1 billion games daily, $450 million quarterly revenues. And they probably have more active users than Twitter, depending on how you interpret the stats. We see stats like this around games. And what they say is partly that people are prepared to pay with their money and pay with their time and their attention to work extraordinarily hard at something quite difficult. I've trained myself up to be pretty awesome at this game. There's not much else in my life outside of work that I've worked at this hard. I'm being frank here. Now, and so I want to share with you very quickly a few core ideas about watching people at play and watching how games tell us about ourselves in new ways. Because I think a lot of the lessons I'm hearing again and again is that in a way the digital age we live in is a bit like a game. It's a living world, it's an architecture, it's a geography. It is a landscape that's constantly shifting that we must negotiate together. And the most important skills are not having an answer, are not having an expertise. It's the skills for collaboration and exploration. It's the iterative skills that things like games manifest in us and that show us at our best. And so there are 3 areas that come up again and again when I look at people and games. And the first of these is around failure. And I feel that great games, and great games are hard to make, they take the idea of failure and they turn it into the idea that you haven't yet succeeded. They reward effort rather than punishing failure. And people have been claiming to do this kind of thing for decades, for centuries. But we are a very long way off it. Your 5-year-old who plays with everything, who experiments with everything in most skills, in most schools, he is turned into a 12-year-old who fears crosses and tests, who's turned into a 20-year-old who doesn't even try at many things because of the fear of failure. And yet at play, we see people for whom repeated effort is part of the thrill, where learning itself is something that deeply satisfies us when We are rewarded for our efforts. And when we are rewarded in meaningful ways, and this brings me to my second point, fast, meaningful, frequent feedback. If we look across the gamut of cognitive research at what we know about people, we know that people are extraordinarily good at making decisions, at making very difficult decisions when they have rapid, meaningful, frequent feedback. Studies of firefighters, studies of doctors show that expertise translates into extraordinarily high performance when the feedback is fast and meaningful and frequent. But we also know that people are, well, kind of rubbish when consequences are distant from them in time and space. Climate change, global warming, we are psychologically appallingly ill-equipped to deal with these kind of things as a species because the consequences of actions are distant from us in time and space. So we cannot learn, we cannot progress, we cannot do the things that we are best at as humans. We can't transform or change anything. And I think this is where technology comes in a very profound sense, because by allowing us to receive meaningful feedback in meaningful ways, it allows us to be better, well, frankly, at almost everything. And the more I think about productivity and working lives, the more it seems to me that a lot of the feedback we get from devices, from the amazing opportunities surrounding us, this is not meaningful. It's frequent, but it's distraction. It's not engineered like we engineer something like a game. Something where unless someone is having fun, they will throw it away, where it has to be so good, they will pay you to use it. It's a very high bar to set. And that leads me on to the final point. And this is the idea about systems thinking. I said that the world is a geography of information and ecology. And these are the kind of problems we face now. We exist within staggeringly complicated systems, and we have to be able to think about them as systems. In a system, there's no such thing as an unintended consequence. There's just consequences. There's just stuff that happens, and you have to be able to react. And you have to be able to work together, and you have to be able to learn, and you have to be able to learn very fast. And that means you have to have a lot of experience of tinkering and playing and learning together within systems. And this is where play comes in. And when I say play is serious, I mean this in the strictest sense. When stuff is too big a deal to practice for real, we play. War games, medicine. Throughout history, we have turned to play to help us practice those things that are too serious to be practiced for real. And there's a phrase that captures a lot of this for me, and that's the idea of designing for loss of control. This is the compulsory Minecraft slide. Minecraft meets Game of Thrones. If people know Minecraft or not, I heard someone once describe it to me as a gateway drug for computer programming, which made it sound kind of evil, but designing for loss of control is not the same thing as a free-for-all. It's quite the opposite. It's designing with a very careful eye to empowering people. It's designing when you know from the start that you cannot control and should not seek to control or anticipate everything people would do, but you do want to give them amazing tools for making and creating and sharing. Minecraft is more than a game. It seems to be an entire subculture. Sometimes it seems to be not so much a rival to reality as a rather better version of reality where people can go and have things make sense for a while. And yet it's an extraordinary example to me of what you can do if you design sufficiently with loss of control in mind. And it embodies those three things I was talking about. I want to end with one of my favorite quotes. 80% of success is showing up. I think Woody Allen was asked about this in an interview, and he said, it's probably the only true thing I've ever said. And I think, for me, we don't even realize that for most of human history, in work, in leisure, most people have not been showing up for most challenges because they fear failure too much, because they don't know how to get on board and take part, because they are invisible to the system. And one of the very few guarantees is that if you don't try in the first place, you cannot succeed. And when I look at the lessons we can learn by watching people at play, and through the staggering opportunities we're talking about here of interactive technology connecting the majority of humankind through devices in their hands, I think the scale of the transformation we can bring relies upon bringing everyone with us, and bringing everyone with us to bring their expertise to bear together on problems they wouldn't have even shown up for 40 or 50 years ago. And so, everybody showing up, trying, failure being replaced by effort, systems thinking rather than linear thinking, discovering together, exploring the geography of the world. These, I hope, are a few interesting thoughts to leave you with. It's not about using games. It's not even about looking at games as such. For me, it's about looking at people at play and learning something potentially extraordinary about what it means to thrive in a digital age. Thank you very much.